Hello. Yeah. Good afternoon, esteemed speakers, distinguished guests, respected faculty members, and dear students. As we gather on the day three of the Dibrugarh University International Literature Festival 2026, we continue a journey of ideas, imaginations, and artistic exploration. Today's session, My Music, My Literature, invites us into a deeply personal yet universal space where rhythm shapes memory, where melody informs identity, and where literature becomes more than text. It becomes lived experiences. Music and literature are not separate worlds, they echo each other. They influence each other, they carry emotions across time and culture. This session celebrates that intimate dialogue between sound and story, between what we hear and what we write, between the artist and the self. Let us listen not just with attention but with resonance. Welcome to this engaging and evocative conversation. Allow me to now present the voice who will lead us through this conversation, Selime Etullah Shetua, if I'm correctly saying her name, is a poet and a performer who grew up in Tunisia. She released her debut poetry collection, De Odar de Britezel, the De Barbecue et de Oet, in 2022, and its follow up, Opiu, in 2025. She also co edited an anthology, poem Et Luzes d'un mot and phlegm. She is among the authors of the collection O Ne PCU and Cheminée de Liberty. She also performs at museums, during literary festivals, and at electro concerts. I beg your pardon if I mispronounce the words, that is purely unintended. Over to you, over to the speaker, and we really hope to an engaging conversation. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the presence of Ron, who's going to be playing the guitar while I read the poems. Just to let you know, like you could hear from the French names of my books, I normally write in French. So I was recently in a residency where I translated some of my work and I wrote some things in English. But it's not my first language, my first writing language. So I hope it goes well. And I'm really glad to be here with you all. Like she spoke of a conversation. So please feel free at any moment if you feel like you would like to ask a question. The idea is that I'm going to be giving some readings and then speaking about a bit about my work. But if you guys feel like you have a question that pops up during the moments where I'm speaking, not during the readings, but during the speech moments, you can totally ask it, and it will help me try and present my work in a way that's meaningful and useful for you. Okay? Thank you so much.
Seek, cherche, seek, cherche, seek, cherche, seek, seek, seek. Do not let it fleet away. Dig, uncover, clear the rubble. It might lead you to the way. Buried inside endless ruins, you'll find armors to protect you. So just take them, cover your skin against the times that were scattered. History has been besieged, plundered, skinned into a shell. It spins dizzy with all.
Everywhere watching, hunting, nails on our skin, pinning us down. Les tréfonds des mensonges te guettent, te traquent, te clouent, t'attaquent, matraquent, 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 matraquent. The times keep fleeting away, taking with them all the meaning. But if you take the time to seek, you may start feeling something. A liquid line between your hands, dissolving when you hold it. Just try and catch the floating thread, let it
blind you with its brightness in the darkness of times that left. Meaning comes, goes, and comes again. Take time.
With fear, but just keep walking the right way. We've heard and felt too much to speak. Language seems stripped of its meaning, as if all the words of the world won't be enough to save the day. But just keep seeking, searching, seeking, seeking in the babel of dreams, the siblings at war. Seek, just keep seeking, just throw the words deep in the void, infinite when nothing makes sense. You know, No one will understand, but you just have to keep going to protect your dreams from dying. So just keep seeking, searching, just keep seeking, searching, search deep, deep in your skin, the skin that tingles, it tingles after a day by the sea. The body feels empty despite all the naps that followed one another on your sandy futa. The air's heat cannot be survived. It calls for seas rescue, for water running day and night to humidify the skin and irrigate the veins. You were born between two Mediterranean shores. You know them so well, you love them so much, so you keep endlessly joining them in recurrent carbon trails that feel like playing a game of spot the differences. On the one side, mountains so dry they feel like a desert. On the other, mountains not so white anymore, but still mostly green. In Tunis's airport, you already feel the familiarity that softens and irritates, and the usual chaos at luggage claim, and all the rest looks very much alike, like always. Every day, sitting down to work feels like suffocating, knots tightening under piles of books, words racing, barely touching your hungover head. This state is your daily, even without the booze, for matter has dissolved in a grayish mist. The air is moist, your face shiny like that of another you don't even recognize. The windy breeze you so longed for refuses to give in, disappears like a whisper. The hope for it to dry up the sweat only makes you long for its windy breath. The skin, it stings and it tingles, it stings and it tingles, it stings and it tingles, it gets browner every day. Swimsuit marks become pallid cloves on your corpse, clean sweat seeps through dilated pores while the sun gently barbecues your organs. It's fire, and yet it makes you relaxed. You feel safe far away from your year in Paris. Every summer you go to this Hammamet beach, for it's the only place where your
Clumsy body finds a beat of silence. Without longing for a life, you know where to stand. Without dreams that collapse.
face of high walls, it digs at your inside, full of a hated void. Nothing's left of your dreams to climb empires. Your dreams, they're full of the lies, the unspoken we repeat, the holes we accept as though they were virtue, and in the in-between, the carbon crossing shows the myth as clear as a beggar's wish. Lizard on the sand, your skin becomes pain and you feel alive, at least for a minute. It feels as if now death was too far, the body too present, and yet liquefying. The heat is too much, the flesh almost melting, but it does not matter. The body is nothing more than part of the decor, the lover hugging Pompeii's dusty floor, and all the comets, the incessant litanies. مش normal سخانة سخنت سخانة ياسر سخانة يلفت trop chaud, c'est trop chaud ياسر too hot. This is all too hot, way too hot. This is unbearable. So from room to room, ACs and fans, they cool down the houses while heating the towns, and the showers roll, draining water tables. So with each gulp that trickles down your throat, you think that maybe in just a few years there will be nothing left. Just dry air turning flesh to charcoal, tiny fossil molded in summer torpor. When the field of ruins, looted like a carrion, becomes a field of ashes, deadly and infertile, what will be of our indigenous bodies? How many will we be in makeshift cargo holds when it will be too hot and there won't be water? What will we do with the children's bodies? What will we do with my parents' bodies, my grandparents' bodies, with all the bodies who won't have managed to cross? ضلت أجدادي بدونت أصحابي شنو ذنبهم? They were condemned because they were born on the side where papers closed down the world. I could escape نمشي ونخليهم, but what will all these bodies do? All these bodies chained to their shore, all these bodies whose life is deemed worthless.
Roaming unchecked is the privilege of those whose ancestors thought they could
own the whole world. So it takes a lot. It takes a lot to wake up every morning, to wake up, get going with work, get going with school, get going to a life that keeps going, that might keep going without you. The coffee inhaled in a hurry and the cigarettes grilling the lungs, chairs filled your poor lungs, sprayed every day with infertile ashes. Every day. You take the road that leads you to nothing more but the heart of silence that tells you come into being. For you are nothing, I am nothing. You were never anything more than a myth, an illusion. My whole life is just an illusion. In me, nothing is true, nothing holds. In me, there is the lie. In me, there is the other. In my words, in my clothes, in my half-shaped skull. The other, hating myself, hating the fear that crushes me, and loathing the yoke when it takes hold of me. I am nothing without the yoke, without the idea that my shore isn't enough, won't ever be enough, that my savage ancestors owe everything to the other, that the invader did them good, that it is okay to not be able to speak your ancestors' language. For my ancestors' language, it isn't worth much, is it? I barely even know what my ancestors' language is. It's some sort of myth of political illusion, just like me. I was always told that being other was good, because my body, they told me it was nothing. A white mask speaking in a civilized tongue, clean and polished, smooth as a pebble. I am the incarnation of integration. But my body, it remains brown and it falls under the law. My body is born as a being in demand, and to whom people can always say no. My body, it is nothing. It could die in the depths of the Dead Sea, become humus, fertilize the abyss with its aborted dreams. My body, it is nothing. My body walks dead from shore to shore astray. Unable to stop, it could swim a long time, relentless, and it would reach the right side of water. A white uniform would welcome it there and send it back to its burdened shore. And yet, it's beautiful, my shore, my country is beautiful. It could have been a dream if it hadn't been stripped of its history, condemned to become a country where laws put bodies at the bottom level of rights. Laws, they are the myth. Bodies, they are real, but the myth puts bodies on top of other bodies. Earth is to all of us, and yet bodies die because they are forbidden from seeking survival. It's not how life should be. It's where justice becomes illegal. It's how the world goes in its senseless order, but it's madness. A shared delirium where walls, they kill. My body, it is nothing. My body doesn't count. My people's bodies, they don't count either. I come from a looted shore where we live without rights. But we have to hold on to our dreams, to just keep holding on. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just gonna come closer to you. Does anyone have a question? Or a remark or a comment or whatever? Otherwise, I can speak. I can blab away, but if you want to say something, you can. Okay, so I'll speak. So I've been a poet for maybe 7 or 8 years now.
I started writing on my own, on my phone. I posted things like on the internet and whatever. And I started doing open mics, a lot of them. That was like how I got into performance poetry. And then I was lucky enough that I was able to do a master's in creative writing in France. I was living there. I was born in Tunisia, like I said, but I went to France when I was 18 years old to study at first psychology, at first medicine actually, but I quit after 3 months. And then I started studying psychology, but I didn't really like it. I have a degree, but I never worked as a psychologist. And but because I felt like I really wanted to try to get closer to books, it was really quite stupid. I didn't know what I wanted to do with that. I just knew that I always liked reading, and that being surrounded with books was where I was happier. So I didn't expect it to lead me to performance, but somehow it did. And so I did this creative writing thing, and I met lots of people, and I discovered that you could mix poetry with other types of arts, that you could do poetry with music, and you could do poetry with like visual arts and stuff like that. And I've been doing that now for like 6 or 7 years. I'm lucky enough that it has become my job, like, and the idea why I wanted to try and merge different arts with poetry is because I have always felt very close to books, but it's not the case for everyone. There are lots of people who might feel like books might be intimidating or threatening, and sometimes hearing words instead of having to read them might be a way to reach a different kind of public. So that's how I got into those readings. And after a while, I started working mostly with like electronic music because I wanted also to bring the codes of partying, because I like to party, and to bring the codes of partying into literature, and to try and be able to like enjoy a poetry reading like you might enjoy a concert in a way that can be a lot more chill. Even though usually my texts, most of them do not speak about subjects that are real fun. Even some of them do. But I wrote a lot for a very long time about borders and papers because I've been subjected myself as someone who's from the global south to a very strong scrutiny, I guess, from the French government and all their institutions that check on your papers and your visas and whatever. And even though I'm here now through the French embassy, that's how I ended up in India. But I'm not French. I'm still a Tunisian citizen, and I still have to like renew my papers and whatever. But I was lucky enough to get to this side of the world thanks to a program it's a program that has been created by the French embassy, which basically brings authors to France from India and authors from France to India and South Asia. So I just spent like a month in Sri Lanka working on my writing and on performances. Mm, I can keep speaking, but does anyone want to say something? No? You guys are good? Yeah.
Could you explain to us what your previous poem was all about?
I can explain what my poem was all about. Absolutely. I'm just gonna drink some water before. Basically, the poem was about something I realized after having spent a few years in France. That basically, even though you might feel in your own country that I came from quite a privileged background. So when I was living in Tunisia, I didn't feel like a second-class citizen at all. And I realized that, and I also was in the French school system ever since I was 3 years old. So I felt particularly adapted to that culture. And I felt like that would make me belong when I would get to France. And when I got there, at first it was fine, but then after a while, since I changed, I decided to study something else, it became harder and harder for me to renew my papers. And at the same time, I was seeing that lots of people couldn't get papers at all because, like I said, I come from a privileged background. So basically, there was a way for me to do it legally. But all the people who end up having to cross the Mediterranean or to cross whatever seas or borders illegally. It's not that they want to do it illegally, it's just that there's no legal way for them to do it, because being born in the global south with the global south passport kind of makes you undesirable by default, and you perpetually need to prove that your body, your ideas, your life is worth something. You are not expected to just have the desire to live freely and to go wherever you want. So that text is about that. It's about trying to make sense of the feeling I had at some point after struggling a little bit to get new papers. That even though I came from a place of privilege, I still was subjected to that scrutiny, and to try and use my experience to maybe raise awareness among like French people about that issue, because like in their heads, I would never be subjected to that. And in a way, it made the whole thing absurd, because since even me, who had all that connection to that culture, struggled, you kind of, it kind of like, sometimes people, it made them realize that there was no way to do that legally, and that the laws had to be changed. So, but I think we live right now in a world that creates lots of segregation between people, and even though people are aware of it, I don't know how much they can actually act. So now I sometimes see poetry and writing, rather than a way of raising awareness, more maybe as a way of keeping our hope alive and creating community in between people who try to make the world a better place. Because I think that if you keep connecting to the arts and to reading and to whatever, it makes you more empathetic as a human being. And maybe we can create small places where we care about each other, even though the world keeps getting darker, I guess. Don't know if I answered your question. Does anyone else have anything to say? Yeah, of course. I think there's a mic. Perfect. It was working, but I think you turned it off.
I think I'm audible enough to you. Is
Yes.
that fine? Yeah. So,
Yeah.
okay. Right. So, lovely poem, and I mean, music just added to the charm of it, and listening to it like at 2 p.m. in the under the tree, just made it more special. But I want to go to the meaning of poetry, and essentially, when we talk about any kind of literary text, there is obviously a text and there's obviously a subtext to it, right? So when it comes to performance kind of a poetry, where do you sort of see is the importance of subtext more there rather than the text? Because the emotions and the meanings that are essentially implied when you're writing a story in a novel or a novella, you sort of assume that while reading it, the readers will able to get the subtext out of it. But when it is a performance poetry, because also of the limitation of time that is given to you, do you think then the importance of subtext becomes more while you're performing it than the text of what you sort of write? Yeah, that's it.
It's a great question. I always say that I don't understand poetry at all. Like, I love reading poems. I've loved that for a very long time. It has saved me from very dark times in my life. But usually, when I read a poem for the first time, I don't understand anything, but I do feel lots of things. And that's the same thing that happens to me when I listen to someone perform. It's kind of like I get through a journey of emotions, but very often, if you ask me what that person spoke about, I would be incapable of telling you even the general theme of their work. It's very rare that the meaning, like the usual meaning of communication, gets to me. But at the same time, I feel like I get connected to something deeper and maybe less visible in a way. So, and I think art is a lot about that, about like bringing very strong emotions. And afterwards, if you do like a close reading of a text or whatever, you're gonna find more meaning to it. But I think that poetry should not be approached as something to understand with your brain straight away. I think you can let your like yeah, your body, your feelings, everything lead you to what it might mean to you. And also I think that poetry is like the most subjective probably literary form, and that it's full of images, and like it's not necessarily narrative. It can be, but it's not always narrative. So very often it's more about receiving those images and letting them just like flow through you, like you'd be, I don't know, watching a painting or listening to music or whatever. You would, if you listen to music, sometimes you don't understand the lyrics, and still you feel lots of things. So that's kind of the way I approach poetry. I feel like it may open you to something different, and maybe it will lead you to be someone who becomes a reader and would be more interested in the meaning. But that's also why, because there was a moment where I was doing lots of performances, and I thought that I might not need to publish anything, because I was like, anyway, my work has to be received in public and whatever. But I think it's also interesting to be able to read the text on your own, and to make your own, like to try and make your own sense of it, and also to let it connect with your own rhythm, because I have a very specific way of reading my poems, but I do not feel it is the only way that they can be read with. And even as far as I'm concerned, like with Ron, we did not rehearse. Like we met like less than an hour ago. And so for me, when I do a reading or a performance or whatever, the idea is that I try to feel the text as I'm like giving it to the public. And so each reading, each performance is going to be very different. So you're probably not going to be receiving the same thing. This text, for example, there were moments when I read it right after the 7th of October happened, and it had a completely different meaning at that time. Depending if I read it in Tunisia, like I think, or here, since it's also a global South country, I think there is a sense of community that emerges with the people who receive it. While if I read it in France, it might be perceived as a bit offensive towards like white people who might feel like it's targeting them, which is not, I'm not trying to target them. I'm just trying to speak of my experience in an intimate way and see how it connects with other people's experiences, I guess. But yeah, I think that all of us, we have very different backgrounds and very different experiences. And the way we're going to connect to any text or any poem or any performance, it's going to be driven by where we are at that exact moment. So each one of us, even whether they read or they hear or whatever, they won't have the same experience of text. So the subtext is not necessarily something I think about a lot, because I think it changes all the time. And there are lots of people, like, for example, when I published my book, some people, like, they asked me, like, I speak of a tree. I have no idea how you call that in English, but in French it's called le cyprès, a cypress tree, I don't know, whatever. And I had picked that up from a poem that I love from a French writer, a very well-known French writer named Baudelaire, whom you might know, like he's one of the most famous French poets, Charles Baudelaire. He lived in the 19th century, and he wrote this very long poem called Le Voyage, like the journey, and it's about trying to explore the world in order to find yourself, and always discovering that no place is better than the one you would want. You would find kind of like the same sense of decay everywhere in the world. That's kind of like his take about this poem. And he's got like this tree, the cypress tree, which is presented as kind of a figure of insatiable desire, a figure that always tries to find more and get more out of life. And I really like that image. So this cypress always comes back in that book. And someone once told me, but you know that the cyprès is like, it's the tree that you find in cemeteries in Europe and in France. And I had no idea about that. So they told me, yeah, that tree is like, that's because your book is about death. And I was like, probably in a way, because the poem is about the poem which I got inspired by does speak of death as the last journey of everything. But I had no conscious intention of using that image as that of death. It was just something that touched me. Anyway, I hope I answered your question. Okay, cool. Does anyone else want to say something? Maybe?
Okay, thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you for.
So
since we also belong from global south, we also face similar discrimination and all. So do you have any Indian poet like who inspired you? Like
Indian poet. I have one, but like it must be very mainstream for you guys. It's Rabindranath Tagore. But I'm honestly not so well read in Indian poetry. And if you have things to recommend, I would love that. But I don't think I know any contemporary Indian poet.
Rabindranath Tagore is, I think, is best. He also talks about his famous poem, "Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high."
Yeah.
So he talks about the world without borders, without domestic involved and all. So we are just very human and all.
Yeah.
So anything like you'll suggest me or us Indian to read about any international poem that will inspire us.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your remark. Yeah.
No, I also want
Yeah.
feedback from you. Like, will you like to suggest us to read any poem?
You guys would like to read a poem?
Yeah.
You want to read a poem?
I want you to suggest us, a poem or any poetry.
You want me to?
Suggest us. Suggest.
Recommend poets.
Ah,
Oh,
suggestion.
okay. I love Walt Whitman, who's an American poet whom you might know of. He wrote a book called Leaves of Grass, where basically it starts with him sitting in the grass and it brings his awareness to himself and to the world. Because I think that's what poetry is all about. It's about becoming attentive and attuned to the world. So it's a great poem. The book is called Leaves of Grass, and the poem I'm talking about it's called Song of Myself. It's a very long poem. I have a tendency to love those. My book is 100 pages long and it's one poem, so I like it when it just flows. I think in a more contemporary way, I have a hard time thinking of people who write in English because I mostly read French poets, and the English. There's a woman. Her name is Adrienne Rich. You know her? Yeah.
I will go through.
Yeah, Adrienne Rich. She like revisited the sonnet form in order to speak about women experiences. So it's very interesting her work, I think. I'm also like honestly, I like Rupi Kaur, who's originally Indian, whom you might know. Like she's Canadian, I think. But like she has a lot of poems about the body, but her most interesting work, in my opinion, is her work about her parents' migration experience because her parents are immigrants, and it's very interesting to read that and to hear her. I heard her perform once in Paris, and it was really very yeah. It made me emotional to hear her speak about that experience that her parents had. So yeah.
Okay, one more question.
Yeah.
Like, how do we bring emotion from the life who can't spoke? For example, trees and water and all, and air and all. So how do we bring this element into a poem, and how do we talk for them? Keeping ourselves in their shoes, and then,
Okay.
for example, trees, how do they feel and all?
I don't necessarily know if I would know how to speak instead of being whose experience is so far away from mine, but I do often feel like I would like to be a tree. I have a poem where I write that because I feel like their stillness is very interesting. I think that in the way I write, and I'm interested in literature in general, and that's kind of like I think a move that has happened in the last 50 years, I'd say, with like lots of feminist and anti-racist thought, and like it's to think that there's no point in trying to be neutral, but that you should just try to realize what your position is in the world. So like the idea of neutrality was very white and very privileged, but anyone from the global south, anyone who's like, if you're a woman, if you're a queer person, whatever, you're gonna have an experience that's impacted by the way the word impacts you. So I would my take would be maybe not to try and speak for a tree or for a flower or for a bird or whatever, but maybe to try and see how I feel about them and how I might get inspired by what I see of them. And I do have like a very strong tendency to just marvel at nature, and maybe in a very innocent way, because like I grew up in the city, so I'm very like I'm clueless about nature. I know the names of like 5 trees maybe,
I would die in 2 days in the forest, I think, even maybe even less. And like, but that has given me some sort of like godly relationship, I think, to nature. And so I wouldn't know how to personify a tree or an animal or whatever, but I think each one of us can connect to them in a different way. That would be my answer.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to say something? Maybe, or do you want to hear some more poetry? Yeah? Okay. I'm gonna read a bit of my book, which I recently tried and translated. It's a bit of a rough draft, but yeah, play. The whole grows around the whole.
The whole goes around the whole. Do not let yourself fall. Hold. Hold on. Hold straight. Hold on straight. The whole goes around the whole. Do not let yourself fall. Hold on. Straight, straight in your boots, straight in your shoes that hold up your Achilles heels. Not only the heels.
The whole body. The body has bruises all over, holes all over, doubts all overs, but hold on, hold yourself straight back, straight, stomach straight, chin straight, hold your head high, tighten your eyes and add just a pinch of arrogance. Just hold on. Do not let yourself fall. We do not let ourselves fall. We take a martial walk towards ourselves to try and be ourselves. We hold. I hold. I know, you know, he, she, they knows, we know, you know, he, she, they know, we know who we are. Well, kind of. We're supposed to know anyway. That's what's expected of us, to know who we are. That's the very least. But the truth is that I don't really know who I am. At least I don't know every day. Today, for example, I don't really know. This morning, it's kind of not very clear who I am. To be fair, it's rarely clear for me in the morning when all the alarms are ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing again, and all I want to do is stay put in my bed. My bed, it's full of crumbs, my bed, even though I had promised myself to stop eating in bed, but I can't drink my coffee dry. The double espressos I swig first thing in the morning to unglue my sleep-ridden eyes, I can't drink them dry. My eyes, they are irritated by the hairs of the cat that is sometimes there, the hairs that get glued to the sheets and won't ever disappear, and will keep gluing my eyes that then need to be unglued with coffee, strong coffees that cannot be drunk dry, because coffee so strong drunk dry gives me heartburn, so I cannot drink it dry. So I grab a piece of toast, a little bowl of muesli to go with the double espressos that I drink first thing in my bed, the double espressos that help me survive the day to come, the day that makes me wish to remain in my bed full of crumbs and coffee stains, the day that makes me want to keep soaking in my dirt-soaked sheets. But inside of me, there's something, I call it Cyprès, and Cyprès, deep in my spine, he wants to leave. He wants to hold on. He wants to hold on. He doesn't want to let himself fall. Cyprès, he bangs on the walls. He starts at Muladhara, he goes up to Saraswara, he keeps growing deep in my spine. He climbs and climbs and climbs. He's just like Jack on his magic bean. Every day he gets a bit higher. His branches, they get closer to the sun. They burn, they almost fall, they keep climbing. There's no limit to the desire to be something when you feel like nothing. Usually, I feel like I'm nothing. But I just have to hold on. to sit in the feeling of being nothing, nothing, really nothing at all, really nothing at all, always nothing at all over nothing at all, burnt all over nothing at all, just ashes floating on top of plant ducts, nothing at all. Ashes, just ashes, but hold still, hold anyway, hold straight, 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 straight in your shoes with their worn down soles, belly tucked, buttocks tucked, head held high, dangling roots clinging to survive. The times they're burning down. It's a snow made of fire. It eats at what's left. The supermarket displays that are always full. The abundance is gross. It is reassuring. It is overwhelming in the alleys. Everywhere, always, everywhere. I have my phone in my hand and I scroll and I scroll. A meme on Instagram and another and yet another. Everywhere, another. It never stops. When the battery is low, I get the backup and I keep scrolling. My brain is wired. The reels they roll up around Cyprès. It's sad sometimes, it sucks often, it's funny sometimes. I have a short laugh, like a joyless bark. It sinks in the scrolling sea, where I'm nothing, nothing at all. In life that sometimes feel like a dump drowning in a dopamine swamp. But I have to hold on. Do not let yourself fall, do not let yourself drown, do not let yourself sink down. Hold on strong, head high, stomach tight, buttocks tight against the acrid wings. Just hold against the wind that stings, the wind that stings, the wind that stings, stirring the boredom that hides everywhere. Everywhere there's too much speed, too much void. The grains rot in the wet cotton of the beans and the chickpeas that made us grow at school in small plastic cups. All of that dump, it is too small for Cyprès. Thank you. So that was part of my book called Opieux,
which was published. Well, it's not part of the book. The book is in French. It's a translation I made of the book. Anyway, sorry. So it's called Opieux, and Opieux means in the sack, like in bed, but in not a very formal way of saying it. And it's a
book I wrote it in 2022, but it was published just a year ago because sometimes publishing time takes a while. And it's a book where I write about not managing to get out of my bed because my head is too full. My head's so full that I feel stuck. I cannot make sense of anything. I cannot find a direction that feels right. So all of it is trying to, it's some sort of contrast and tension between that apparent immobility and how much, how much overthinking and contradictory emotions can be felt at that time. And also, and I think it all comes down to how we can try and be in this world, which is very weird that we're living in, how we can try and find some sort of grounded space between traditions and contemporary capitalism, and how to because basically capitalism wants you to be a productive human being, very productive all the time, and being productive feels good, but that's if you let yourself be engulfed by the desires of that system, you kind of lose yourself. And so it's how to find a balance between what's expected of you and what you expect of yourself, and how you can keep making yourself feel good, I guess, trying to decipher what's about you and what's about the system that makes you run after everything, I would say. I don't know if you have any remarks or questions about that. Yeah, there's a mic.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes. Hello.
Yeah. Just I want to ask a question
Yeah.
about the new generation. Means how poet actually, and what is your to the recommendation to us your guide if you can guide the new generation how can be a one can be a poet and how he can continue the things and like that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I think to write about poetry and writing, like I read a book recently that's called like The Artist's Way, a spiritual path to a more creative life or whatever. And like she said something that's very right, I think. She said anything you really want to do is worth doing badly. Because like when you start doing something, you're gonna be bad at it because like you can be good out of the blue. Like we have this whole idea that artists and writers or whatever, like it's something that comes from God or whatever. You get the inspiration and the muse that whispers in your ear, and suddenly you have a book. That's not true. Writing is joyful, but it's also hard, and it's something that you have to learn, like anything else. So I think if you want to write, you need to start somewhere. You can start by trying to imitate maybe writers you like trying to see poets whom you might be interested in and see how they approach their writing and see if you can, yeah, like do emulate or imitate some of that. I think you need to read also. I think that what really got me into writing at first is that I love reading, and I didn't necessarily read so much poetry when I was younger. I got into it like maybe 10 years ago, and at some point I really felt the need to kind of like learn poems and have them be with me all the time and kind of be there to carry me through difficult times. Like I would tell myself poems, and that made me feel good. And it's also something that you might find, for example, in lots of writing about the Second World War. You'd have people in the concentration camps reading poetry to each other because like it makes you feel human. I'm not saying that poetry can save you. I'm just saying that you probably need to try and develop an intimate relationship with words and see where that gets you. And I think you also need to realize as a writer that it takes time. It takes time to have a good text. A text is never good when you start it, usually. Like, it's very rare that you would have a poem that's good on the first trial. You need to write, and then you need to rewrite, and then you need to rewrite again and to let it rest, and you'll pick it up like a month later or whatever, and realize that you can work it again. Like, the first draft you're gonna have, it's maybe the general idea, but it won't be excellent, and that's okay. Like, you must not be bad to yourself, like when you try to get into writing, you do it from a very vulnerable place, and the place that has to be cherished, I think, inside yourself, and that place needs kindness and care because it's doing its best and it's gonna get good. So I don't know, I hope that helps. I think
Hello. Yeah, no, that was great.
Thank you.
Salima, I had two questions. One was a question and the other was a request. One was your English is fantastic, and I think we all understand how much of an effort, because if you try and imagine rapping language in the language that you're best at, or writing poetry, and you're doing it, so that's quite amazing in the old-fashioned sense of the word. But the question I had was, in your mind, do you think in three different languages now, or is it one language which is the primary language? And the other was a request that can you do a short piece just in French without, or you can translate the meaning, but let's hear the French just purely how you actually write, so that we don't have to understand the meaning, but we can get the feeling of your language.
Thank you, Chair. It's a great question because people ask me all the time. People often ask me in what language I think or write or dream or whatever, and I think for me it's not very clear because I grew up in a bilingual household. Like, both my parents spoke French and Arabic fluently, and I was, like I said, in the French school system. So basically, the language of the school was mostly French, even though we'd speak Arabic sometimes to each other during recess or like during yeah. Anyway, like, but I had only two people in my life to whom I had to speak Arabic. They were my parents, my grandparents on my dad's side, because they spoke no French. And thank God they didn't, because otherwise I think I wouldn't speak any Arabic. So I owe it to them and to my parents, like very strong insistence that we keep taking Arabic classes. We had that, my sister and I, like twice a week at home, because like they really wanted that for us to be able to speak the language of our ancestors and of our country, which was strangely didn't feel good when we were younger, because we were so dominated by the colonial, I guess, way of life. So like I think if they hadn't insisted that much, we would barely speak any French, any Arabic. But so yeah, but in my household with my friends, I have a tendency to always switch from French to Arabic. And with people who speak English, I also switch to English. Like with my sister, for example, she's also very good at English. We speak a mix of French and Arabic and English. And I don't really realize when I go from one language to another. I feel like my thoughts are carried by meaning, and then the word that makes most sense comes out. Yeah. And for your request of a poem in French, yeah, of course, I will do that. Um, it's a poem about the Arab Spring, which my country went through. Tunisia, it was the first country where the Arab Spring actually started, and we weren't affected as badly as other countries from the Arab world, but it still made an impact. So I'll do that. I start by singing, so maybe don't play, and then you can join me. Thank you. Je suis née dans un pays du Sud, mon enfance sans le soleil, le sable et les figuiers, la mer et le couscous, harissa, olivier. J'y ai ri, j'y ai dansé, j'y ai chanté, j'y ai crié, j'y ai construit des rêves en arabe, en français. J'ai vu des gens prier, d'autres dans les cafés. Tout le monde croyait en Dieu, au moins dans le sacré. Je n'ai manqué de rien, à part de McDo et de jeux vidéo. C'est le seul truc qui me vient quand on me dit c'était comment de grandir dans une dictature. Et bah, je sais pas en fait. Et toi, c'était comment ta démocratie? Ça t'a rendu expert en liberté quand moi j'ai appris à vivre opprimé? Mon enfance sentait le jasmin, on n'a pas eu besoin du printemps arabe pour sentir les odeurs. Notre vie n'était pas morne, triste et sans couleur, même si c'est vrai qu'un parme dégueulasse recouvrait nos villes et qu'on passait par des proxys pour ouvrir YouTube. C'est vrai, mais je n'ai pas grandi dans une toundra givrée attendant patiemment d'arrêter d'hiberner. Mon enfance sentait les fleurs, pas cette révolution. Elle sent le sang, les cris et la sueur. L'espoir inouï, l'espoir trahi, l'horreur de vivre née de la faim, d'exister devenue incertitude possible d'évaluer. Mon enfance sentait le jasmin, on n'a pas eu besoin du printemps arabe pour sentir les odeurs. Je n'aime pas qu'on marie les femmes de mon pays à des maris qui croient que tout leur est permis, que l'hymen demeure synonyme de valeur, puisse plonger une famille au fond du déshonneur, qu'on enchaîne nos corps dans des doubles journées et qu'on continue encore sans cesse à nous fliquer et à fliquer les hommes qui aiment d'autres hommes et puis aussi les femmes qui aiment d'autres femmes. Je n'aime pas que nos corps tarissent en prison pour un joint mal tombé, une baisse divulguée, mais que les dirigeants qui spolient le pays aident nos désespoirs à partir en Syrie. Non, décidément, ce printemps, je ne l'aime pas. Le jasmin fleurit bon et il continuera, mais cette révolution, elle pue l'inachevé. Son jasmin a pourri, on l'a trop piétiné. Les mers sentent toujours l'iode, les embruns dorés, les figues de barbarie piquent toujours les allées. Les dattes sont sucrées. Le thé est à tomber. Mon bled est bien trop beau pour rester enchaîné. Thank you. Thank you, Ron. You can give a big round of applause to Ron. Because like I said, we just met, so he's just improvising with everything and we don't know each other, so it's kind of very impressive. And thank you for the request, Richard. Do you guys have any more remarks or questions? Anything, honestly. I'm very open. Okay, I might have some other thing about like the question you asked me earlier about like how do you become a poet. I think community is important. I was extremely lucky to start writing poetry at a time where in France and in Paris in particular there were very lively scenes. Basically two people. You just need to be with someone else and tell them I'm gonna read you a poem, and the other person just has to listen, and that's it. So it's very easy to create. And if you think that in this assembly or in this university or whatever some people might enjoy doing that, like you can literally just sit on this lawn and you'll be doing an open mic. And I think that's a place where your work can really grow, because like writing is often described as a very solitary experience, which it is, because when you write and you rewrite, you're alone with your work and your emotions and whatever. But I think that that moment of an open mic can really bring back the idea that when we write, usually it's because we feel misunderstood or we feel like our emotions need a bigger outlet or a deeper like analysis or whatever. And sharing it with another people, I think it directly brings back that sense of connection. So I would really advise you to find someone, either an open mic, or if you're a reader, like it can just be sending your work to someone. But don't send it if you're not happy about it. Like only send it if you feel you've done your best for that piece and you're ready to receive criticism that will be constructive. Because if you send something that's still a draft, that's not worked enough, I think it's too vulnerable and too fragile to be able to receive something negative about it. But criticism can also be like very positive. But I think like, yeah, having someone you trust give you advice on how you can make your work better, how you can, for example, I give a lot of writing workshops, and what I tell people is that basically it's not that I'm telling you how to do it, but how I don't know what you want to do, but if, for example, you're trying to say something and 5 people understand the opposite, you probably can work more on that. Because like if you cannot yeah, communicate your idea, it means that your idea is unclear. And that's how you can help each other, I think, rewrite, rework. Yeah. And I think really like poetry and writing and reading, it really brings community. So I really encourage you, if you find spaces for that, even if you don't write, you just want to listen. Sometimes it's really something that brings a lot of joy, I think. Yeah. I don't know if anyone has anything they want to say.
Hello.
Hello, ma'am. Good
Hello.
afternoon. I have a question like, can poetry still change society, or it has become a, private art of self-expression?
In my opinion, I don't know if poetry can. I think for me, poetry is a way for me to be a better person, because when I write and read poems and hear poems, I feel better about myself. So that's the way I have, like, it's almost
practice for me, because that's how I can connect in a better way to the world. And I also think that if you try and, like I said earlier, like put paying attention to other things that surround you, and if you really start paying attention in a way, that's something that I think brings more closeness. And if you pay attention, like there are bad things that happen in the world, but there are also good things happening. It was actually what I was trying to work on during my residency, how to be more present. Because like I feel like the darkness of the world kind of had made me very negative and very angry for a long time, and then I felt like anger wouldn't get me anywhere, because like if I it made me violent, and like I would get violence and give back violence, and in the end it didn't make anything make sense. And I feel like if you're really present to any experience, there's gonna be violence and there's gonna be joy at the same time, like happening at the same time.
I think that if you write poems, you have to be attentive to both and to maybe sometimes find little bits of light even in the midst of darkness. There's like a poet whom I love, whom you may know. Her name's Session Duilf. She's, you know her? Yes, she's amazing. She was this lady who lived in the 14th century in Japan. And she has this book. I don't know how it would be translated to English, but like it's something like bed notes. Basically, it's something that she would write uh, at night after having experienced her whole day, and it was kind of trying to make a list of everything she saw and that made her feel something during the day. So it could be sometimes like the sound of a bird or the sound of a child crying or the precise moment where I remember there's one about a dog who kind of like he was wet or whatever that day, and like it felt as if he felt ashamed of looking like that and wouldn't answer his masters anymore because he felt bad about being in such a bad shape in that particular day. And like very weirdly, like it's over 700 years old, and when you read that, it feels very similar to an experience you might have, because she went so deep into noticing the small details that she made them into something that can be shared by everyone. And I don't know, like I lived in New York for a while. I was an exchange student there, and our creative writing teacher, she made us read a book called The Book of Delights. And it was a guy who had decided for just 1 year to write about everything good he saw. Like every day, he'd find one good thing that happened to him, even in the worst of his days. And I think it's a practice that's kind of interesting because, like, we, with the media and the whole of the darkness of society, we kind of feel like we need to notice everything that's wrong. But there are also things that are very right. For example, being able to have such an amazing literary festival with so many different people and all your great questions. This is an incredible moment. And I think we can create lots of those, and we create them more if we like realize how precious they are while they're happening. So I think in a way that can be a way of making poetry,
Of making and poetry change society. I don't know if anyone else. Maybe we can take. I can take like two more questions, and then I think we'll have to end the session.
If you're out of questions, it's okay. We can just stop. Okay. Well, it was great speaking to you guys. I hope you had fun. I had a lot of fun. This was a great moment. And if you want to ask me questions, not in front of everyone, I'll be hanging around.
Today's conversation has shown us how melody and can shape memory, and how words can carry sound, and how personal journeys often find their truest voice at the intersections of the two. At the intersections of music and literature, we are reminded that the body is never neutral. The body becomes a site of voice, a performance of power. It is the body that carries stories of othering, and as an act of resistance come poems like this that essentially turns bodies as sites of power and as sites of strength. On behalf of the Brugger University, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed speaker for sharing such thoughtful insights and lived experiences in a way that her poetries were self-reflections of, I think, the times that she has passed, and her poetries really reflected the kind of resistance that she sort of took in her life. Thank you for allowing us to listen. And this was for me the first time enjoying a poetry performance, and it was really, and I really enjoyed it to the core. I mean to say live enjoying it, and it was really a pleasure to the eyes and a pleasure to the ears to watch such a remarkable poetry performance. Your poetries are so relatable. be it in the question of bodies or othering or the wiredness of brains that speaks the day-to-day struggles of each and every individual living in the space. And because each individual in today's era are experiencing some kind of othering, some kind of domination, and I think your poems were just so right, and it reflected a kind of resistance. Thank you. I would also like to extend my sincere thanks to Ronanjoy, if pronouncing it correctly, Ronanjoy Borwa, whose guitar made an evocative accompaniment that added depth, texture, and emotional resonance to the performance of poetry. It did not look like that you were meeting for the first time. I thought that you were rehearsed and you came, and it was so much in tune with the performance. To Kaushik Bhuya, Assistant Professor, for ensuring that this venue works to the T. And amidst all its challenges, I know that this venue was the most challenging part to arrange. I am so thankful that this venue, with his kind guidance, ran so smoothly. And as a part of the teaching fraternity, we are ensuring that it's our commitment to the university that we contribute in making any event of this university a grand success. A huge round of applause to the volunteers of this session. I'm personally want to thank the volunteers because this venue was very hard to arrange with the current weather, and because this venue was most difficult to manage because we are shifting the location. Morning we were there, afternoon we are here. So this venue was, although it was enjoyable being under the tree and enjoying the music, poetry, the morning session was also very beautiful, but it was very challenging. I also want to thank our wonderful audience for so attentive presence and your engagement. It is your curiosity that gives meanings to conversations and poetry like this. With that, we conclude this session. I also, as I sign off from my final comparing session of the third season of Dibrugarh University Literature Festival, I do so with gratitude, and it has been a true privilege, an honor, and a remarkable experience. This is Barnali Das signing off from the third season of Dibrugarh University International Literature Festival. Thankful for the conversation, music, and memories we have created together. It was indeed a privilege and honor to compare these seasons. Dibrugarh University Literature Festival. We have one more day. So I hope all of you have an enjoyable final day of enjoying this literature festival. Thank you once again.